Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Layman's Law School, where three Southern gentlemen lawyers sit around and talk about the legal issues of the day in layman's terms, and hopefully bring a little light, learning, and joy into your life. So, without further ado, gentlemen,
we're bringing the joy.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long week, difficult week for some. So.
Yeah.
You know.
And you're just going to make it longer.
I'm just going to make it worse.
You're going to make it longer? Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'll have my mandatory sip.
It was a difficult week for me with, my child being sick. So this is going to bring me joy. Your pain.
To roll right into the weekend.
It'll really get me going.
Yeah, today's word is Schadenfreude. It's a German word. It means enjoying the pain of others.
I got a little German in me,
There we go.
Anglo-Saxon.
And done. And done. There you go, Reid. Enjoy, sir. So today we're going to be kind of going back on an old topic we talked about before. That's a defamation lawsuit against Fox News related to the Dominion voting systems that actually resolved before trial. And it resulted in a $787 million verdict. Or not verdict, but settlement. Paid by Fox News for basically... broadcasting false information. If we could someone remind the public here, if you're going to sue somebody for defamation, what are you looking for? What kind of evidence do you need, and what do they have to have done?
Well, you're looking for somebody that has money and the ability to pay for your damages. But what you're looking for is someone or something, a corporation or media place that has provided or spoken or printed false information about you, and that false information caused you damages. And in damages, it's usually financial damages.
Right. Yeah. So in this case, Fox News was apparently reporting on some of the claims and made by, I think, President Trump and some of his supporters that there were some issues with the Dominion voting systems that turned out to be unfounded, and in the Dominion voting systems case, that was settled pre-suit. But there was also a voting technology company called Smartmatic that was not involved in that lawsuit and has brought their own claim for similar damages. And so you can see how this may affect a system like this. These people are dealing with government contracts. Typically, those are very lucrative, and they're dealing with government contracts not only with the U.S. but all across the world. And if you destroy the reputation of those particular people, they're going to be able to. And if they lose contracts because of it, if they have to do a bunch of work for PR to, promote the idea that this was all false, and they have to fight against that, they're going to be able to bring those damages.
And it's usually a lot more easy for them to show through their financials that they have damages. When you're a big company that tracks everything and has, financial statements that can show how many contracts you had, that these contracts were lost for no reason. And you might even be able to, get some of the people that formerly contracted with you, on board to say this is why we dropped them.
And even if you can't recover, you have situations like this where at least it stops it, so you're also trying to, this is publicity for you if you have that, if you're being defamed, to bring it out into the open and make it where people are talking, like us, talking about it, people know that this is BS that they are claiming.
Right. This was most famously demonstrated by the Johnny Depp trial. Sure. Brought it in Virginia where he knew it could be televised. He knew it was going to be salacious. He knew that everybody would watch, be captivated by it, and he also knew that most likely that he, I think it was $300 some odd million that he was suing for would not be able to be paid by Amber Heard. All he wanted was the weeks-long trial showing that she was
crapping in his bed.
Yeah,
a principled man.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so this doesn't look good for Fox News, based on what we've sort of seen in the past. But it brings me to another point. And this is going to be a little bit of a weird and odd.
Anytime Chace says weird, it can be very scary.
It can go any way.
Right. We're going to talk about supernormal stimuli today.
Yeah. Well,
okay. No, we are going to get into that a little bit, but we'll talk about basically the role of the press in overall in democracy, because I think that one of the things that's actually is a huge disservice to our children right now in the school curriculum is how little focus is actually placed on civics and learning about how the government works and understanding that and understanding the importance and the role of the press. I have a lot of political disagreements with Donald Trump's policies, but a lot of times I don't try to argue too much about it because there is so much going on behind closed doors that I don't know about, I'm not allowed to know about.
Sure.
All I hope is that there's somebody in there that's a competent person that can make good decisions. But what I did vehemently disagree with and dislike is his willingness to completely undermine and try to destroy America's confidence in a pillar of our actual democracy, and that is the press. Now, granted, the press hasn't really been shoring up this democracy.
Thanks for the disclaimer and at least coming forward with the granted, right? They are not without fault here.
Yeah. I think there's lots of blame in lots of areas.
That's right.
The media is not holding up their end of the bargain, and where, in my opinion, it really changed is, the television essentially being all cable, all the time, and having to have news all the time.
Mm-hmm.
News doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
Opinions happen all the time, but
right.
news doesn't happen all the time.
And that's the thing that's what changed really I would say the industry is the CNN, Fox News, and these, 80% of it is this is what happened, and then the rest of it is
this is what you should think about it.
Yeah, this is what you should think about it, and this is everybody is so one-sided, right, whether it be to the left or to the right, that if all you did is watch Fox News and you had knew nothing about America,
right,
you would think absolutely the far right and the Republicans are right.
Yep.
And if you didn't know anything about America and you just came to this country and all you did is watch CNN or one of those other, you would think the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it is so far besides just reporting of what happened.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that started or began from what I remember, in 2001. Because America was so captivated by what was occurring with the attacks on 9/11, they started 24-hour coverage. They had the news crawl that started across the bottom when new news came out, and they realized that they could, they needed actual, programming because 9/11s aren't occurring every week.
Sure.
And so they started these opinion shows a lot. It used to be that you got the news at 12, at 6, and at 11, I think. And because they had all that time to prepare, they vetted those stories very, very well. They didn't put a lot of opinion in there, and people relied on that information a lot to make decisions. But in the 24-hour news cycle, they started with basically taking sides here, and I think it's been to the detriment of our democracy because it's driven us apart. And
another part of that, and I agree with Shawn what you were saying too, but another part of that is it's no longer, even if all of them are guilty of it, even if they're giving opinions, no longer it's just here's how we feel. It's combative. They want somebody to argue with them on the other side, and they're not talking about the issues, they're arguing about their opinions. Mm-hmm. And you used to have broadcasters, I mean, obviously too young, I'm a youthful man to really rely on it, but the Walter Cronkites of the world, and I just remember my parents and my grandparents, there'd be a singular news person, and that person was adamant with himself. He usually was a man at that time that he wasn't going to take sides. He was presenting the news. He wasn't giving opinions. He was giving the news, and that is nowhere close. I can't think of a broadcaster that doesn't just give their opinion constantly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't personally.
Well, and then the other thing is, there's so much of a demand from these companies to be first to publish.
Absolutely.
So there is, very little vetting.
If any.
if a source said this, it's a national headline. Yeah. If it's something that they think that they are going to get clicks on or advertising dollars from, and then we'll vet that later. We were just reporting.
And legally, the media has so much leeway.
Very broad.
So they have so much protection where if you went out there screaming on the streets something that was incorrect, you can be held liable a lot easier than if you're,
I could be held liable. They'll just never get anything. I'm essentially judgment proof.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so, the role of the press and their function is protected by the First Amendment. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects the freedom of the press, among other fundamental freedoms like, us to have this actual conversation right here. But the idea is that it's vital for the actual functioning of our democracy, and I believe that, because we have to have a well-informed voting public. However, I'm not sure that the people that drafted this Constitution had an idea that we would all have a phone in our pocket 24 hours a day, that the people that developed the apps on that phone were, driven only by the goal of capturing our attention all the time, and that they would hire neuroscientists to
and
basically
that you could get information from across the world in a millisecond.
Yeah, exactly. And these neuroscientists are hired to figure out how to properly hijack the addictive properties or the addictive parts of your brain that are connected to gambling. And it happens with every species that we know of, right? Where if you give it a certain stimulus, but you give it intermittently. For instance, if you have a bird that every time it pecks a little thing, it gets a pellet, a little pigeon.
Eventually
right?
it'll learn.
Right, it'll learn, right? And so it'll peck it 10 times a day, right? But if you give it randomly, where it might give it 3 times every 10 times it pecks, or 2 times, if you get randomly, the bird will peck it thousands and thousands and thousands of times a day, because it's waiting
just
for
trying
that
to get that
dopamine.
next fix.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit those
those
3 cherries.
Yeah.
Bing, 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 bing.
So whatever it is that interests you, or that you focus on, I want you to just try to notice, if you're scrolling through TikTok, you're scrolling through Instagram, see us on YouTube, right? There should be about, 2 or 3 boring videos that don't interest you, and you skip right through. And then there's something that's very interesting, very funny that you like, right? And then you scroll through, and there's not another one for 10. And then there's something you're very interested in, right? That is all done by design. And the idea is to have you addicted to it. And I think that everyone kind of has experienced a little bit where they realized that they were focusing too much on their phone when their spouse was talking to them or a friend was talking to them.
Well, like in some of that, is that some of that like engagement length? Like they want to be able to show to their advertisers that the average person on TikTok or Instagram is on the platform for this period of time.
Yeah.
That way you should advertise with us.
Yeah, exactly. And what Gary V talks about it, Gary Vaynerchuk of VaynerMedia, he basically says attention is the new real estate. And he says it used to be that you could go and buy, an acre on Manhattan for, $1, right? And the media and people's attention on the internet is the new real estate. And so that's why he's so focused on social media and people getting involved in that type of thing. And what they have figured out is that when it comes to political news and opinions, that it is the most outrageous opinions that get the most attention, the most engagement. And so that causes social media not only to project that, but also the news organizations have, in the interest of, money, decided to also engage in that type of thing. And so I think people have recognized since 2001, I'll ask you guys, do you guys recognize a polarization politically in this country between, for over the last 20 years?
No polarization at all. It's a happy, merry family of people. Are government leaders working together for the common goal of making America better.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I
disagree a little.
I wish.
Absolutely. I think it's clear as day. It's just, there isn't really no right or wrong. It's just that everybody wants to get everybody. Mm-hmm. When I say everybody, I mean the media, social media, whatever it is, where they're trying to make money. It's clear that they're just trying to get you to argue. Twitter even started because it was an easy way to argue.
Well, and that,
people, if you think about it, Chase, you're talking about the, rash or the something that's kind of crazy that gets the attention. That's you talking about addicting, gambling stuff. If you go somewhere to a party, what are you talking about? You're talking about
gambling.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's your problem, Shawn. But it's in every aspect of life. You go to a party, and you get home, and you're hanging out with your wife, and you're talking about reminiscing. It's always, did you see that crazy son of a bitch jump off the thing? Everybody's always remembers and looks towards the thing that's out of the ordinary,
the extreme, yeah,
the extreme. And so that's what has essentially happened with the media, is that they say. Even y'all have all seen the coverage of hurricanes and things where you have a weatherman out there saying how terrible it is and how he can barely stand up, and then you have 2 or 3 guys walking behind him just waving to the camera.
Yeah.
It's whatever it is. They're trying to make it sound worse, sound crazier, sound more insane.
Well, and it's funny because we have this new scheme where one of us just brings a topic.
Right.
So I found out about this topic about 5 minutes ago before we turned on the camera and microphones. And just like last week, I either read an article or heard a news article about how like Facebook encourages discord. Like that if there is an anger face placed on somebody's post, that in the algorithm that 10 times puts it to the top of people's things.
Twitter does the same thing.
Instead of, if somebody, did a heart or a thumbs up or something, it gets no credit compared to if somebody put an angry.
I'll give you a great example. I'm a huge Braves fan.
Probably we didn't know.
Yeah, probably for the people out there, probably more than healthy. But I don't follow baseball really. I follow the Braves. And I have just been flooded with Philly crap. Phillies. I didn't go out talking crap to the Philly fans. I didn't read anything about them. All I do is follow the Braves players and the people who write about them. Sure. And now I'm just Phillied full, right?
Right.
Why? Why is that? Because the algorithm thinks it's going to piss me off.
That's right.
But I'm too smart for that damn algorithm, Chace. It's not going to piss me off.
Okay, good. So, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this, because, it's one thing, you're feeling this stuff, and you're getting angry about what you're seeing on the news channel that you prefer, and you're getting angry. If that happens to you, that should put you on your guard immediately, okay? Because that's somebody manipulating you for the most part. And my hope is that we're not gonna be able to solve it with this, but we can maybe suggest, and I'm gonna basically propose, okay, that we become the Layman's Law School political think tank and come up with some policies to help better regulate social media, better regulate, because we're going to be challenging some institutional parts of our society and of our Constitution, challenging the freedom of actual speech, and see if we can't somehow, thread the needle of, or
at least make it better.
Yeah, not allowing sophisticated, well-funded corporations to, pit us against each other, when we all want to just sort of, we all want America to do well. We want our society to grow and be, fruitful and everything. And then we got these corporations that are well-funded that just want to make money, that are willing to do whatever is required to make us angry at home, dislike each other, vote against each other. And, there's got to be some way that we can, combat this.
And it's just, I just always think about it as, what America was founded on, and that is liberty. It's the freedom for you to do what you want to do,
right?
That doesn't infringe upon anybody else,
right?
And now we have, like you said, corporations that are trying to, essentially infringe on everyone's liberty by forcing these issues and creating these issues, some of which are there and some of which are not there. But many of them that even are there are just being highly exaggerated in order to invoke the emotions of people that are easily emotionally invoked, I guess.
And manipulated.
Sure.
Yeah, and that becomes a problem. That old notion of basically, was it my rights end where someone else's began?
Yes.
Right? Like that notion is very clear and kind of simple, but we've come a long way in technology, we've come a long way in neuroscience, psychology, and all that. So,
it's tougher now, and what you're saying, because you're not in your little tribe anymore.
No.
Your tribe is worldwide.
Sure.
And so your rights are are they being infringed upon, or are you infringing upon someone's rights when you're on the internet? You know, that's never really been in play until now.
Right.
So your rights are always touching someone's rights now.
Or are
Always.
you just pissed off and think that your rights are being infringed upon?
And that's a good point, Shawn, because I hear it all the time. I know my rights. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't. You know, you don't have the right to a lot of these things that people are saying. You just don't.
Right.
But anyway, off topic. Go ahead,
so but
Chace.
I'm just saying, when you talk about you don't know your rights. All right. To know your rights, just to give you an idea, for the First Amendment, since our founding, the First Amendment's not that long. Actually, relatively short. It fits on less than a page.
Encompasses a lot, though.
But there have been
say
over
600 million cases or something.
no.
Crazy.
It was actually some ridiculous number of pages. But it's about 870 cases that have been decided on it. Average length of the opinions, if you put them on a A4 sheet of paper like this,
12 font.
is 157 pages. So
it's some ridiculous
right. So if you want to
number
know and actually understand your rights in totality,
Yeah.
you're going to have to read the First Amendment. Then you have to read all 870 cases.
and you need to read them slow, and then because you got to cross-reference them.
That's right. And you got to understand
Shepherdize.
and understand Latin in certain areas. And so
And there's even differences in that. The how you view certain things. There's different interpretations, but there's I can't think of the term from law school, but there's a different way you might be middle ground.
You're talking about strict scrutiny?
Yeah, all the scrutiny levels and all the things. So it's not, even if you read them all, you might not know it.
That's right.
You know, and honestly, you have to, and I think this is the biggest problem to me in America, is that you have to realize that you just don't know.
right.
We're lawyers, and we can't know and predict everything about the First Amendment because it changes, and new challenges come up about what is classified as protection of the First Amendment, and we can sit here today and figure it all out, but then next year there's going to be something that we couldn't predict, we didn't know about,
Something that you never anticipated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we got to get to the point where I think in our society where each person can say to themselves, you know, I just don't know this. I don't fully understand it. Instead of thinking about how I'm going to respond to you to criticize you because my point's right. That's
or start just not caring about what other people think. You know, take in information, filter it through your own experiences, knowledge, and either use it to further develop your own opinions or discard it. But who cares? You know, if Chace has an opinion, like he loves UFC.
Right.
I don't mind UFC, but I'm not crazy about it. That doesn't mean that I tell Chace that UFC is crap, and I don't think it's a real sport and no one should watch it. It doesn't. It's just like Chace likes that.
Yeah. Okay.
I like golf a lot more than Chace does.
Great.
It's just
A lot more. Well, I'm just going to kind of talk about that whole concept of my rights being where yours in. So, like, and the freedom of the press, and just keep all those notions in mind when I give you this example. Okay, you know, when they wrote that, they weren't thinking about neuroscience. They weren't thinking about what we understood about what triggers a person's anger, their gambling, the sort of inherent gambling addictive behavior. Well, now we know all those things, and we know how to do it. We know how to trick it. It's something called supernormal stimuli. Okay.
Right. There we
So
go.
new supernormal stimuli is basically take something that someone is attracted to or interested in naturally as a part of their natural drives. For us, like salty foods, you know, or sweet foods, that type of thing, right? And then you produce something that is so crazy outside of what nature actually provides. That, like, for instance, they do this to butterflies. They're attracted to some particular color. Well, they just enhanced that color like 1,000 times, did experiments, and those butterflies would try to land on that flower until they died, right? Ignoring real flowers that were in the same area, right? And so what I'm thinking about is, like, how could we possibly stop this kind of behavior? And would it require a constitutional amendment? When I say stop this behavior, I'm saying define a clear line where it says basically you can't call yourself news, and then also use neuroscience to basically try to use sensationalism to pit people against one another to gain ratings. You know what I mean? You are actually purposefully misleading someone to say, this is how I'm going to get good information about my democracy, so I'm going to tune in to the best news, whatever, what's it called, Fair and Balanced. I'm going to tune in to CNN, whatever their slogan is, right? Because that's where I get good information. And then have, basically, you're put through a multi-million-dollar, probably billion-dollar machine to basically keep your attention and to almost assuredly misinform you by giving you the most extreme opinions
on that side.
Yeah, the most extreme opinions to take a position on and to form your opinions on, and it really matters about how you vote because it affects how you vote. So I mean that's a challenging ask.
That's huge.
Yeah,
and that's rights. You talk about constitutional rights; those are rights colliding. It's
sure.
We have the right. You talk about the free press. We have the right to have clear information of how, and we also have the right to vote who we want into office. Well, if those are already colliding because we're not voting who we want into office, we're voting what these people have tricked us into thinking to vote into office. So if you look at it that way, that's an infringement upon your right there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it goes way deeper. I think the very first thing that you got to do is start from, it always starts with the money. Corporations are not people. And that's got to be number one on the forefront. It cannot be treated like people.
I think the United States Supreme Court would disagree with your statement. But
I agree. I know they do. But what I'm saying is I think that is a mistake. I think that's a big mistake. I think, what was it, 1970, there was 160-something lobbyists, and I don't know, 5 years ago, there was 16,000. That's a problem.
Sure.
The corporations and the lobbyists have more power than the government, and that is beyond scary to me. That's the problem, in my opinion. So I think if you start there, then you can kind of trickle down of other policies that can correct those. And I also think you're talking about the news. There needs to be, we're regulated by the bar, the State Bar of Georgia, the State Bar of South Carolina, and then, the federal. So if we do something, we can't practice law again, ever.
Yeah, that's right.
So why can't we have that with the media?
A regulatory body.
Sure. Now, that doesn't take away from somebody that wants to be a crackpot and go put up their website. So you need to have an accreditation and not something that's made up.
Yeah.
Some kind of thing.
You're a licensed news organization.
Right.
And then they're unlicensed news organizations.
Absolutely. And if you want to go watch the unlicensed, so be it. But there has to be some kind of punch back to it.
Reid, I am fully behind the licensing provision. I like it, but so here's the thing: is I don't think you would have a problem there. I think in analyzing what they're supporting. So if they are actually providing factual information, but it's an extreme opinion, right? That should be allowed. Okay.
Sure.
All right. As long as they're honest about what they're doing and they're presenting that. And the idea is that as long as they aren't purposefully targeting and trying to manipulate the, underlying neurology of human beings to focus their attention, right, just for ratings. And that becomes difficult because you got to prove that they're using some sort of algorithm, some sort of scientific neuroscience to manipulate the person. And I guess you would have to have almost you would have to have computer programs. These ones, it was a documentary that came out a number of years ago, The Social Dilemma. And it was a bunch of former social media programmers that basically said they don't allowing their children to get on any sort of social media whatsoever because they understood exactly what was happening on social media to the children. And all they were doing was programming their brain for addiction. And addiction to the iPad, addiction to the phone, and I think a lot of parents out there have experienced this. Go ahead and go wait until your kid's playing a video game, okay, and just take it away from them. And say, hey, we're gonna go get some pizza, and just walk up and take it from them, or we're going to Chuck E. Cheese and just take it from the middle of a game. See what happens.
I do it regularly, Chase.
Well,
and
what happens, Reid?
I do it intentionally.
And what happens?
I do it well, it doesn't happen anymore.
They say, "Oh,
it doesn't happen anymore."
They say, "Thank you, Father."
Well, that didn't happen
Let's
the
go.
first few times.
Exactly.
I guess I have an old school way.
Thank you,
of,
Father. Let's go downstairs and have some Domino's.
Yes, exactly.
No.
A little pizza place down the joint.
No, they reacted like an addict.
They did for a little bit, until that ended.
Right, and so I think it is immoral. Okay, for people to purposely plan that stuff out. It happens in video games. So if you guys are playing, Red
Dawn.
What is it? Well,
I don't remember.
The one I remember was it's a
Contra.
It's like a modern war. It's a modern warfare where you play against zombies, right? And every once in a while, you go around. You have to go open these chests to get a new gun. And they had used a computer algorithm to basically trigger your gambling, the gambling part of your brain, the part that becomes addicted to gambling, okay, on how often, good stuff came out of that particular trunk. And so you kept playing and kept playing and kept playing and kept playing longer and longer and longer.
You're just running around like a banshee, opening up every single trunk you can.
Right. And here's the kicker, okay? So when it comes to adults, I think there's some limitations. Right, there's some real limitations because you got to have some freedom as an adult, right?
Sure.
But they're doing it, targeting it towards children.
Yeah.
And if you are raised and your brain is programmed, I mean, these are formative years from the time you're like 5. People are playing video games now, right? From the time to you're 18, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. And if you've got that, I guess, gambling addiction sort of thing triggered and ready to go, from the time you're 5 to the time you're 18, and a corporation is profiting off of that, targeting it, hiring scientists, paying millions of dollars to try to get into the head of your child to addict them to a game. I'm sorry, but I don't see that's anywhere in the sort of freedom of freedom of expression in creating your video game. You don't have a right to do that. Your rights stop right there. As far as I'm concerned. And
see, now I'm going to just, save this podcast so that when, in 10 years, 11 years, when Porter is wanting to play video games, I'm going to, what was the term? Superficial artificial stimulant?
Superficial stimulant.
Chace Uncle Chace says no video games, Porter.
Right.
Sorry,
buddy.
Take it up with him.
That's right. You can make me evil Uncle Chace.
Right? But anyway, the problem is too that you have to use these things. It's kind of like, how do you survive in the world if you're trying to get a job without a phone? You just can't right now. And I say you have to use these things because at school, my oldest, he's in 4th, and you have to have a computer at home. You have to have a tablet or something because that's where they do their work.
Well, that's how they turn it in.
Right.
So there's no bringing the paper in and here's my homework.
You can't say, okay, well, unless you homeschool, you can't really go, this is never going to happen in my household. Because they're going to find, when I say they, the corporations that are doing these things are going to find ways in. The school programs use the same stuff. But at least, if you're addicted to math, it's a lot better than being addicted to a game show. But I got one option for you, Chace, okay. And this is an extreme option, and I remembered it recently. So I think it was in the late 90s. Conan O'Brien was doing his show, and he dressed up, or somebody told him he looked like the president of Sweden. She's a lady. And so he's like, being Conan, thought it was funny, and he dressed up on his show many times, and he started making ads for her, and he actually got like the Swedish language, and he would have something written, and he would just say it. He didn't know what he even was saying, but it was just for America. And then Sweden started getting crazy about Conan because they loved it, but they can't have that kind of political they looked at it as advertisement and were trying to get him kicked off, and they would not allow it in their country because the person that was opposing the president that looked like Conan was saying, this isn't fair. If we can't run ads, he's running ads full time.
Right.
So we could do that. We could just shut it completely down and go, look, you got to have word of mouth, and that's about it. That's the China extreme version.
Right.
Obviously, so I guess the point of that is that there are middle grounds, and there's steps to where we can go. We're at the far extreme of anybody can say anything because it's my First Amendment right, and I can program your child to be a robot because I can do whatever the hell I want. There's got to be some levels to that.
Yeah. Well,
I just want to know how far this goes back, because I remember playing the Oregon Trail game. And I was highly addicted to that game.
Too.
Like when they used to bring the computer cart around to your classroom, and you only had it for like a week, and then it was a couple months until you got it back.
Did your legs start shaking when he heard that cart?
Oh yeah, ford the river. Always ford the river. Don't matter what happens to the supplies. Ford the river. You're gonna get there quicker.
Dysentery.
Well, I like the idea of maybe banning some of the political advertising, or just at least limiting it. There's it's a Harvard professor that was actually recruited by some Congress members to actually run, because I cannot remember his name. He's got a Joe Rogan podcast. I'll put it in the description. But he basically was told that he would have to spend all of his time after like 1 o'clock campaigning and raising money for the next campaign during his 4 years of actual service. Right. So he spent half the time doing it. He's like, well, I'm not doing that. And the reason for that, in part, is because of Citizens United, a decision that said corporations are people and therefore have the right to freedom of speech and can invest as much money as they want in political ads without any sort of oversight. And he basically said it would be interesting to see if you just gave every American citizen a $250 voucher for each race.
I'd love it.
For each race that they have a right to vote in because of their district or whatever it is, and they can give it to whichever candidate, that they want. And then the actual advertising budget and the only money that can be spent to support that particular candidate, would be that $250 given by actual citizens to the individual political candidates. And it would just kind of, you got people you have almost the most powerful individuals, corporations, with the most resources to actually influence our political decision making, and their only interest is to extract as much money from us and profit from American people as possible. And if they don't do that, they can be sued by their shareholders.
Yep. Right. So that's
a dangerous system to set up.
That is their core belief.
Yeah.
That's their core belief. Like our core belief is to help people. Their core belief is to make money regardless of what happens. And
it's the duty that they have to their shareholders in the system.
It's an absolute duty. I mean, the goal of a business is to maximize profit.
Right. Especially a corporation.
Corporation.
We're business partners. We're a law firm. We're business partners. But we don't always maximize profit. I
wish we did.
Yeah, but our core belief is to help people.
Absolutely.
And to try to do what's just. Mm-hmm. If we were a corporation, we wouldn't be able to do what we do.
Yeah. Because
our shareholders would say, you mean you're lowering your fee on this?
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Like every time, yeah.
Hey, so look, we are brilliant legal minds. We have the absolute number one media team in the country working for us. If we only valued profit, we would take over this country in a matter of
absolutely
a couple of weeks or whatever. So the fact that we're still in the CSRA is proof that we just try to support our community as best we can. Well, we're kind of running out of time here.
Let me say one last thing before you get on the other topic. So I just want everybody to realize, because I do, that the people that we get to elect, that people, it might be, usually it's 2, sometimes it's 3 for president. And you're always going, there has got to be somebody better out there. There is. There's a lot of great people in America, but we don't get to see them because the corporations have all these other junkies in their pockets. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, before we end, I'm going to give you some of my solutions, okay? And what I'm gonna give you some of my solutions, all right? And you guys can vote sort of yay or nay on each one of these, okay? And then what we might
tie?
That's
Who's
fine.
the tiebreaker?
I am.
D'Angelo?
I am, of course.
Yeah, I know. That's right.
Okay.
All right, Shawn,
But
we got to work together.
We want y'all to vote on the comments.
I'll just tap you underneath the desk here.
2 taps is a yes.
Yeah, just vote in the comments on which one, or how you would decide on this particular issue. And extra points, we'll send you a Hawk Law Group T-shirt if you can actually pinpoint the current constitutional amendment or part of the Constitution that this proposal violates.
Okay.
All right.
So number 1, mandatory military service.
I knew that was going to be number 1.
This is what we refer to as looping. As if he says it often enough.
Right.
Did you consult a
This is a
neurologist to
stimuli.
No, this is supposed to make a bunch of people mad. All the pacifists out there. But before you get mad, mandatory military service, it means mandatory government service. And so if you are a pacifist, we'd have a division that would basically you join the Peace Corps, something like that. But the idea is to bring people all across this country together that are from different cultures, have different political beliefs, and make them rely on each other, make them build teams, make them do something hard, and invest in the country in which they live to start off with. And so that would be the reason for that, number 1.
I'm going with no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going with no, too. I mean, but that's what, that's what...
You can't force somebody. That's like having the draft again.
That's what you're, I think post-secondary education should be about. Whether you go to a trade school, whether you go to a university, obviously, if you live in a certain place and go to elementary, middle school, high school, the demographics of that place are going to affect the people that you come in contact with. But once you go to a trade school or a university or something, I think that is where that interaction takes place. Or if you don't go to school at all and you get out in the workforce, I think that's where you get that exposure to. And I think we have plenty of people willing and able to join the military without that right now. But I do see your points on forcing people that may have not had that exposure into situations with people of different backgrounds, different cultures, learning from them, communicating with them, relying on them as a team member, and ultimately probably trusting those people.
The problem I see with it is it's going to create more governmental jobs, and I don't have a ton of faith in how those jobs are supervised or done.
Well, the single most successful human endeavor that has ever existed is the U.S. Military, and I just think that every American would benefit from going through the system that creates that particular group of individuals.
Think about the amount of people, though, that you would have to...
What if you can't do the push-ups? What if you can't do the push-ups?
Look, there's going to be all kinds of minutia that we would have to deal with.
You get the Peace Corps. You can't do the push-ups, you go to the Peace Corps.
All right, so I have actually thought about that, okay? All right, do you want to monitor the border? Okay, well, all we have to do is have those people sit in a chair, monitor, and basically their job is to fly a drone, monitor thermal imaging on the border. We can determine where people are trying to cross and have Border Patrol come and get them. If there are people concerned about that, they can sit in a chair from their home, serve their country. Here's the thing. This is the idea, okay? How do you treat a rental car versus the car that you own?
I'd treat it just as good.
I probably
exactly the same.
Well, treat the rental
my
car
feeling
better.
is that you have an investment in the thing that you're actually, that you actually own. And what happens is, to me, is that children today, and me, and I include myself in this because I didn't serve the military. It was one of my biggest regrets in my life that I didn't join when I had the opportunity. But if you have no investment in it and you're basically enjoying all the benefits, but you have not invested in it or whatever, there's less of a connection to it. And I think that one of the ills that faces us right now is that we've been so polarized, and the only way to fix it is to have us both invested in it. And you have somebody that's completely different from you that you have to rely on. And you're like, you know what, there's value in that person. They might think differently than me on this issue, but that's a good person. There's value in that person. And I think that builds a better country than the other. So I'll just move on from there. I'll let everybody vote in the comments as to who won this argument. Okay?
Well, you didn't let us give our whole argument, so
Okay,
take an hour to easily.
Looks like
break
2-1.
Okay, so the next one. Okay, all right. I believe in Socrates. He says democracy is a terrible form of government. Okay, and it stems from the idea that allowing everyone, like voting is a skill, and allowing everyone to actually vote basically is harmful to us. And the idea is that if everyone can vote, then it breeds politicians that are what they call sweet shop owners, people that will give sweets to the masses to get the vote, right? But will give them nothing that nourishes them. It's basically hiring a sweet shop owner to take care of your health versus a doctor, right? And people that are skilled at voting would choose the doctor. And so as a part of mandatory military service, as well as I would have a constitutional amendment that makes the federal government in charge of one aspect of core curriculum, and that would be logic and analytical reasoning. It would be taught from the time they're a child to the time they graduate 18. And the reason for that is, learning about logic and analytical reasoning makes you be able to recognize invalid, incorrect forms of argument that have been recognized for 800 years. And I see it in the news all the time, okay? And it's called, like, one of them that I see all the time is called ad hominem, right? So if someone basically makes has a great opinion about how to deal with something, right? And it is a perfect idea, flawless, inspired by God, and it's going to solve everybody's problems. And then someone says, yeah, but that person, that person gambles too much, right? They don't attack the argument. They don't attack the idea. They attack the person, right? And that has been recognized as an invalid form of attacking an argument for years. And the people that have had people recognize it intuitively, right? And they get mad when somebody does that, and they can't explain exactly why, because they're going off topic. We're talking about, whatever is the the First Amendment, and now you're talking about my gambling addiction or golf addiction or
whatever. So so your proposal?
So my proposal would be to limit. Okay,
gambling and golf go together.
Okay,
I mean,
all right. First of all, it would be to limit voting to those that pay taxes, serve the government, public officials, and people that serve in the military.
That's a hard no for me.
Hard no as well. Jeez. I mean, what you got to think about what happens. Tell me those three things.
Okay, all right. Government officials. Okay, so those are people that are actually working and actively invested in some way of serving
so they've already got there.
Elected officials. Okay, we're talking about judges. We're talking about whatever. Then you have active military. Okay, and people people that work for the government, and it would be anything from mayors. People that are elected in city councils, police officers.
You're letting the wolf guard the hen house.
Firemen.
You're letting the wolf guard the hen house. They're voting for themselves.
No,
it's the same. It's the you talk about a buddy club.
But that's what they get to do now.
But that's what you're going to create. If that happens, you would create what we had in South Carolina with the
Murdaugh.
Murdaugh. That's what you're creating essentially.
How so?
You're creating a group of an entity that they are watching over themselves, and they're not trustworthy. The people that are in there are, in my opinion, not trustworthy.
Well, that's what we have now.
But it makes it worse.
No, it doesn't. I don't think so. Just because the only people that get to vote are the people that are invested. The people who are already within the system, okay, they understand how it works.
I think
I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create a system for establishing and growing better voters.
I think it would work if, big if people had a drive and sensibility that you do, and a lot of these people that are in these positions do not. And just because they're in a position doesn't mean that they have any of these values that you're talking about that this creates.
Well, I mean, just think about the elimination, if that was brought into effect today. Think about the elimination of all of the groups of people that would no longer be eligible to vote. A lot of those, would be the lower economic status. A lot of those would be minorities. I mean, I just don't see how you take and say that if you're not already involved in a job in government that, now you just don't get a say-so in government. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of money that are from a traditionally, oppressed background or something like that care just as much about Georgia and Augusta and their United States, and all they have is their vote.
Well, here's the thing. That sounds sad to take away something from someone like that. Okay, but they've organized their life in a way that, and they've made decisions that has led their life to that place, right? We're talking about your future, Porter's future, when someone's making a decision about who to elect, all right? So let's just say, for instance, you were going to have brain surgery, okay? No licensing structure whatsoever required for who can do that. Can someone just advertise a whole bunch and just start doing brain surgery? Should they have to go to medical college? Should they actually be skilled at what they're doing? We're talking about deciding the future, the laws, the way in which we're governed, okay? And you're gonna give that right to somebody that can't make decisions about whether or not to take this job or that.
You're talking about the doctor. You're not, and so that's the official that is being elected. Hold on.
I'm talking about the person that is making the decisions.
I know, but you're talking about, doesn't a doctor have to go to medical school? Doesn't a doctor have to do that? Right. So then, if that's what you want to do, put the contestant for the job in the ringer. Make him get certified, or her. Make her go to whatever school you want to. Logic school, make them go to logic school. Then you can run. That's a better solution, in my opinion. You go to who is eligible, not who can vote.
All right, I'll have to think about that idea. I'll have to think about that idea. Okay, but at the same time, it's the decision-making part that's most important to me, and I don't think we can change the opinions of individual people. The only way we can prove is to actually build a better system, and so
sure. I mean,
all of these things are different and that's the key to it, though, Chase, is that it's a lot of this we're disagreeing with you because. If the first thing we agreed to, then I would agree to the second thing.
Exactly.
I know, but I'm saying I don't agree with the original premise. So then the underlying policies after that
don't fall
in line because you don't have the first one. Okay. Now, if number 2 is a law, then I vote for number 1.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right. Well, how about this? So, what if we were to? You can either. Mandatory military service, okay, for let's just say 2 years, or Peace Corps, whatever you want to do, right? And then every single human being, like every American citizen, can vote at that stage. They've invested their time, right? And or you can pass a civics test and a logical reasoning test, okay? You don't have to serve in the military. If you can pass that test, identify, logical fallacies, show that you're not going to be manipulated by talking heads that are using invalid
it just really worries me about who's making the test, who's who is deciding on which is the right answer to a logic test.
I mean,
that's not too hard. That's not too hard.
It's going to make me.
It is hard because different people have different ways they communicate. It is the way that their language is different. The way that you view the world is different. So I mean, to create the test itself would be a problem. I mean, you talk about discrimination. Are you going to have different tests for the South and the North and the East and the West? Are you going to have different tests for Hispanic or Asian and African Americans? So that's a problem.
Oh, we're going to have to bore the hell out of people because just to drive the point home that you're wrong about the logic test. It's like these are the things.
Okay, I'm wrong about the logic test, but who's going to make the test and who decides what questions to put on?
That's a good question.
The ITBS, of course.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like the test that you take throughout school.
Okay. Well,
standardized testing.
That's worked so well.
Well, we haven't solved anything, but for those that agree with me, please comment and give these two hell.
Please do.
And those that disagree with me, please call me a fascist. Put little angry faces in the social media thing, so this algorithm goes through the roof. So, thank y'all so much for tuning in. I will prove these guys wrong next time in the next podcast. Thanks.
Very doubtful.